All right, we're in 2 Kings chapter number 18. And we're finally getting to the best king since King David. And his name is Hezekiah. And we're going to begin in verse 1. It says, "Now it came to pass in the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign." Now, we know what kind of king was in Israel. He was no good. But Hezekiah was the son of Ahaz, who was no good. He was one of the bad kings of Judah. But from, somewhere, his mother, grandmother, I thought about it as I was studying this, and, down in the next verse it lists his mother's name, but I thought about how that, just like with Timothy, when Paul began to share with him, that he shared with him, how that he had really learned of faith, and to have faith was through his mother and his grandmother. And Hezekiah, no doubt, had learned at least from his mother, about having faith and trust in God. But we'll see what he does here. 25 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. So again, they list the mother's name really with just the good kings, because it was really in these years it was the mother's responsibility to raise the child and teach the child, so it would shine a bad light on the mother and the family if that child was not good. And so that's why we've seen with the good kings that they listed the mother's name. "And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that David his father did." No doubt he had heard about all the things that David had done, what kind of king David was, and that's what he had the desire to follow that pattern of, follow that example of. And he had to have been taught that way by his mother. So, he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. One of the very few kings from Israel and Judah that were good kings. And here's some of the things that he did. He removed the high places and brake the images and cut down the groves and brake in pieces the brazen serpent that Moses had made. For unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it, and he called it Nehushtan, or just a piece of brass. But because Moses had formed that and put it on his staff, they were worshiping that. But, God instructed Moses to make that because at the time when Moses made it, the people were evil. And there were serpents that came in the land, and they were biting the people, and they were dying. There were numerous people came to Moses, pray that God would remove this. And that's why God instructed him to make that and to hold it up before the people, and all that looked on it wouldn't die. They'd be spared. And it was also an example of Jesus Christ. Jesus talks about that in the book of John, and how that he would be lifted up just like the serpent that Moses had. And all that looked upon Jesus or called upon him would what? Be saved. So that serpent was actually a symbol of Christ. But Hezekiah, he breaks it into pieces because the people begin to worship it, rather than looking forward to the one that it represented. But they were so into all kind of worship that it didn't matter to them if it was anything, they'd worship it. But one thing that Hezekiah's done, he's removed the high places, he cut down the groves. Even some of the other kings that they said did things that were right in the eyes of God, that was one thing they didn't do. But see, Hezekiah, he's wanting to make things totally right with God. He's wanting the people to get back to serving God the way they should. So, and you know, that's what a leader should do. He trusted in the Lord God of Israel, so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor any that were before him. So, since King David, if you lined them up, it would be King David and then King Hezekiah. Hezekiah would be number 2 as far as good. All the rest of them, none of them even compared to Hezekiah. And the reason is, he was willing to take that next step. He was willing to stand for God and do what might upset some folks and cut down those groves and tear up the high places, destroy all that. He was willing to do it no matter what people said. For he clave to the Lord, and that's important. He walked, in other words, he walked as close as he could to God. He clave to the Lord and departed not from following him, but kept his commandments which the Lord commanded Moses. So he's doing his best to obey what God has said. And he's trying to be that kind of an example to the people that he's leading, the people of Judah. And the Lord was with him, and he prospered whithersoever he went forth. And he rebelled against the king of Assyria, and served him not. He smote the Philistines even unto Gaza, and the borders thereof, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. So, you know, he was one, he knew God was on their side, and he was not going to bow down to the king of Assyria. He was not going to allow the Philistines to wreak havoc for them, so he just pushed the Philistines out of the way, and then he rejected the king of Assyria. So, you know, he's stepping out, and he's stepping out big. But you know what? We can step out big if we're following what God says, and he'll be with us every time. Now, there may be people that don't like it. There may be people that don't want to, you know, there were probably people still, again, upset with Hezekiah. You're going to cause us to be killed. You're rejecting the king of Assyria. You're doing this to the Philistines. You're bringing death to us. No doubt there were people that were thinking that. Because previous kings, you know, they would bow down to them. Do whatever you want to, just don't hurt us. You know, how sad. And it came to pass in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. So here we have an invasion of Israel. You know, we read last week reasons why God allowed that, because they doubted, they didn't obey God. You know, they just didn't want anything to do with God. So God allowed them to be taken into captivity. And when the king moved all the Israelites out of Israel, he brought his own people in there and moved them in. And then brought one of the Israelite priests down there to teach them how to serve the God of Israel. So it was something else. But, you know, God had allowed this because they would not follow what he said. They were disobedient. And at the end of 3 years, they took it, even in the 6th year of Hezekiah, that is the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was taken. So, you know, here, you know, it took them a little bit, but they finally took the whole place. It's ours. It's not yours any longer. And the king of Assyria did carry away Israel into Assyria, and put them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. because they obeyed not the voice of their Lord their God, but transgressed his covenant, and all that Moses the servant of the Lord commanded, and would not hear them, nor do them. So, they disobeyed God, they didn't listen to God, they didn't want anything to do with God. So God allowed this to take place. There's a point, God will say enough's enough. God will back off and let you butt with your own head. God will let you go your own way. But you know what? God wants us to follow him. It breaks his heart, but yet he still is righteous. He still is righteous in all the judgment that he brings on folks or allows to come on folks, because he is long-suffering, because he is God. But he allowed this because of, really because of their disobedience. Now, in the 14th year of Hezekiah, did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, come up against all the fenced cities of Judah and took them. And Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria to Lachish, saying, I have offended, return from me, that which thou puttest on me will I bear. And the king of Assyria appointed unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So, Hezekiah was trusting God, no matter what. Even though Assyria had invaded Judah, took some of the cities, but Hezekiah was not going back down. Hezekiah was not going to say, okay, just take us, and God can't handle it. He knew God could handle it. And Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house. At that time did Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the pillars which Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria. So, he did give him money, but the king of Assyria, he wants all this land. Not only the lands that Israel had inhabited, he wants the land that Judah inhabits. And, when we talk about Judah, that encompassed also the tribe of Benjamin, because Benjamin was right next door and to the south of Judah. So all that was considered Judah when the tribes were split. And the king of Assyria sent Tartan and Rabsaris and Rabshakeh from Lachish to King Hezekiah with a great host against Jerusalem. And they went up and came to Jerusalem, and when they were come up, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is in the highway of the fuller's field. So, the king of Assyria was really trying to intimidate the people of Judah. We're going to bring this big army up here, and we're going to have them out here, and you're going to be able to see them, and you're going to bow down to us. So, and when they had called to the king, there came out to them Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, which was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder. These came out, the king didn't. And Rabshakeh said unto them, Speak you now to Hezekiah. Thus saith the great king, the king of Assyria, What confidence is this wherein thou trustest? He's wanting to know, why are y'all really not shaking in your boots right now? Why are you not afraid? What confidence is this that you're trusting in? They're trusting in God. Hezekiah knows that God can do all things. Hezekiah knows that God can take care of no matter how big an army they bring. Thou sayest, but they are but vain words. I have counsel and strength for the war. Now in whom dost thou trust, that thou rebellest against me? You know, these folks, but now Hezekiah had sent, and we'll see a little further down, but he had sent to Egypt, trying to get help from Egypt to come help them against the Assyrian army. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. What does our country do? Countries do the same thing today. They want allies when they have problems and maybe having to go to war. They want people to stand with them. And that's what Hezekiah was going to do. Now behold, thou trustest upon the staff of this bruised reed, even upon Egypt. And that's what this fellow that the king had sent, this is what he was comparing Egypt to, like a weakened reed that, you know, is no good. It has no power. It has no strength. Even upon Egypt, on which if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, unto all that trust on him. So, in other words, he's sharing that, you know, it might just scratch my hand, but it's nothing. We'll crumple that to nothing. You know, but you know, God has other plans. But if you say unto me, we trust in the Lord our God, is not that he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah hath taken away, and hath said to Judah and Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar in Jerusalem. So see, he's still trying to use those scare tactics. What God are you going to trust in? Y'all were worshiping all these different kinds of gods, and here's Hezekiah. He's tore down all the altars. He's burned all this stuff. He's done away with it. And he says he's telling y'all to worship at this one altar. Who are you going to trust? What God are you going to trust? Well, Hezekiah was telling them and showing them they needed to lean on the one true and living God. They needed to trust in that God and no other God. Because he's the only God. All that other was man-made stuff. Now therefore I pray thee, give pledges to my lord the king of Assyria, and I will deliver thee 2,000 horses if thou be able on thy part to set riders upon him. So, you know, here this man is, he's kind of provoking them here. If you'll give us tribute money, you know, I'll deliver unto you all these horses, 2,000 horses. And then he's like, if out of all these folks here, you're able to get riders for them. You know, he's really trying to tell them, you know, y'all are weak. You can't get nothing. You can't do nothing. But, you know, Hezekiah was not a person that gave in easily, which is good. That's what kind of leaders we need. How then wilt thou turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put thy trust on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Who are you going to trust? Me? Or are you going to trust in Egypt and them bringing their chariots over here and horsemen? Am I now come up without the Lord against this place to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. And now he's talking about his God. You know, but then said Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna and Joah unto Rabshakeh, speak, I pray thee, to thy servants in the Syrian language, for we understand it, and talk not with us in the Jews' language. in the ears of the people that are on the wall. Talk in your language. We understand your language. Even the people up on the wall that are up here that are listening to what you've got to say, they'll be able to understand you speaking in your language. But Rabshakeh said unto them, hath my master sent me to thy master and to thee to speak these words? Hath he not sent me to the men which sit on the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you? So, he's like, I'm going to speak in your language. Because he was hoping that would maybe scare them even more, because he knew they could understand the Jewish language. So, and he says, with us, we'll keep you up on that wall so long that you won't have anything to eat. You won't have anything to drink. So, but, God will take care of his people. Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language, and spake, saying, hear the word of the great king, the king of Syria. Thus saith the king, let not Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you out of his hand. So, he's trying now to share with them. He's tore down all the gods' altars and stuff where you were worshiping. You have nothing to depend on. Now you're going to trust. You're going to be deceived by Hezekiah and his words. Don't listen to him. Don't follow. Don't let him to deceive you, be that deceptive to you, because he cannot deliver you out of our hand. Neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us, and this city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Syria. But they're serving the one true and living God. They're not serving a false god like the Assyrians. They're not serving the false gods that Hezekiah had torn down and burned up the altars and all this stuff and destroyed those things. And, he had had a few years here in that process to get them to maybe back to understanding that one altar was all they needed. Because that's the only altar anybody needs, is to go into the altar of the Lord. And that's it. There's no other altar. So he says, hearken not to Hezekiah. For thus saith the king of Assyria, make an agreement with me by a present, and come out to me, and then eat ye every man of his own vine, and every one of his fig tree, and drink you every one the waters of his cistern. So he says, if you'll just come out to me and bring us a present to go back to our king with, then more than likely we'll let you stay here where you're living at. You can still eat from your vineyards and drink from your wells, and you can still do all the things that you're doing every day. But what a lie. He says, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land. Hey, if I do come take you out, I'll take you to a land that's just as good as the one you got. A land of corn and wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of oil, olive, and of honey, that you may live and not die. And hearken not unto Hezekiah when he persuadeth you, saying, the Lord will deliver us. They better listen to Hezekiah. Not this huge army and Rabshakeh. That's not the one to listen to. Hey, if we do come get you, we'll take you to the same kind of land you're living in. You'll have plenty to eat. What a lie, because when they come take them, they're going to be considered servants. They're going to get really what's leftovers to eat, to drink. The work they'll be doing will be for the king of Assyria, not for themselves. And he goes on, he says, hath any of the gods of the nations delivered at all his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? You know, you've heard, as the gods of, hey, your kin folks up there in Israel, did their gods deliver them out of the hand of the king of Assyria? No. You know why? They were worshiping golden calves. They weren't worshiping the one true and living God. But Hezekiah's got them on the right track in Judah of serving the one true and living God. And no doubt he has already told them, just like this man sharing, God will deliver us. You know what? As God's people today, what will God do for us if you know, whatever it is, God will deliver us. It may not be in our timing, and it's not to say that we won't ever go through things, because we will. Satan doesn't like us being here tonight. He's going to bring things our way to try to hinder us. But you know what? We serve a delivering God. He'll get us out the other side of it. He'll carry us all the way to heaven. So, you know, we've got something to look forward to, but we don't ever need to give up. Where are the gods of Hamath and of Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena and Iva? Have they delivered Samaria out of mine hand? No, because they were worshiping all these false gods. They were worshiping these things that couldn't help them. It's just like Pharaoh when the last plague, you know, the firstborn of everything in Egypt died. Even his firstborn son died. See, he thought that their God, it was, I can't remember if it was an eagle god or a snake god, one or the other, he brought the body of his son to, hoping that that God would bring him back to life. But there's only one that can bring us back to life. That's the God we serve. He's done it already. He's done it numerous times. And Jesus, you know, that Spirit raised him up. That same Spirit's going to raise us up one day. Death has been defeated, really, because Jesus Christ went through it and defeated it for us. So, you know, this guy, he's speaking really to the wrong people, because we'll see in just a minute. Who are they among all the gods of the countries that have delivered their country out of mine hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of mine hand? So, you know, he keeps throwing that in there, that, you know, no country has been able to defeat us. No country has been able to escape the power that we have. Do you think you're going to be able to? You know, he's trying to scare them. He's using all this propaganda, you know, to try to scare them. You know, I think during the Korean conflict, or Korean War, I think it was a war myself. Most history books calls it a Korean conflict, but it was a Korean War. You know, they used a lot of propaganda tactics during that war. Dropping leaflets and all kind of stuff. You know, probably more during that maybe than at any other time. I'm not positive on that, but they did a lot of propaganda stuff, you know, on both sides. So, and that's what he's trying to do here. Rasheka he's trying to scare these folks. He's trying to use this propaganda. Nobody's ever came out of our clutch of our hands. But the people held their peace. Why? The people held their peace and answered him not a word. You know, they just act like, you know, they were listening. Maybe it did trouble them, because no doubt it probably would. you see this huge army out here he's brought with him, and then he's in here talking all this junk. Now, it probably, kind of scares you a little bit. But what if you're trusting in God? Just like, the people held their peace and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was, saying, answer him not. In other words, the time that Hezekiah has been king, from the time that he tore all that stuff down, because that was one of the first things that he did. He began to tear that stuff down and do away with it. He had had time to begin to teach these people through the prophets and through the priests that they had, that, God is who we need to serve. Not these false gods. God. So he's had time enough to teach them a little bit and be that example before them. So he tells them, you don't say anything to them. Don't even answer them. And that's what they've done. So, what a blessing. Then came Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, which was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, to Hezekiah with their clothes rent, and told him the words of Rabshakeh. So, they came back and they shared with Hezekiah all the things that Rabshakeh had said. We're going to have another couple of chapters or so of Hezekiah, and they're interesting because he's an interesting person. They've had a lot of kings. A lot of years have gone down, through the lane of time since David to Hezekiah. But yet if you lined them up in order from best to worst, David, Hezekiah. So his mother had to teach him a lot of good things about the Lord. Had to share with him about what kind of king David was. Because these people, even though a lot of them were serving those false gods, they knew their history. They knew what God had done for them. Even though they would stray away from it, they still knew deep down inside what God had done for them. But it's sad that all these folks, the Assyrians and all even Israel. Israel. The northern 10 tribes should have been serving the same God that Judah. Maybe there really should have never been a split in the kingdoms, but there was, and God knew it was going to happen. But from Judah, you would think Jesus came from the tribe of Levites, but he didn't. He came from the tribe of Judah. And Judah had Jerusalem, one of God's favorite cities, his most favorite city. In the book of Revelations, this is how much God loved Jerusalem. A new Jerusalem is going to descend down from heaven. And that's, maybe this is a little off the subject, but that's why I'm glad our president agreed with Israel that Jerusalem should be their capital. We need to move our ambassador's home, embassy there and this kind of stuff. I agree with that because really that is the capital of Israel. That's what God looks at. Not Tel Aviv, not any of these, Joppa or any of these other cities. Jerusalem. Hey, this king, he wanted to take Jerusalem, but he's not going to be able to. So, anybody have anything on these scriptures here?